I think the best thing to do is to start small. So start out with either a project that you need done that's, not a huge project, but maybe getting your social media set up for like a month and scheduled out so you don't have to worry about it. That would be a great project that somebody could do for you for a smaller amount of money.
Welcome to the Female Entrepreneur Musician Podcast with Bree Noble. Bree is a musician, entrepreneur, speaker, and founder of Women of Substance Music Radio and Podcast. Bree's interviews with successful female musicians and industry pros are both inspirational and informational. She also answers your questions about the music business. Bree is on a mission to help you create great music, connect with your fans, and grow your business, and to truly become a female entrepreneur musician.
What is going on? This is Bree Noble, and I want to thank you for tuning in to the Female Entrepreneur Musician Podcast, where we talk about making great music, connecting with your audience, and growing your business. And speaking of growing your business, we have a really interesting episode today. I am going to be talking to you guys about what you can do to grow your musician business by getting help. I know that many of you feel like you're doing so much all the time. You're just overwhelmed by all the tasks that you have. You want to have that space for your creativity and writing music, and you need to have so much time for performing. But how do you keep up with all your marketing, all your social media, writing blogs, doing newsletters, all the stuff that we have to do in the background to really stay in touch with our fans? So what I thought would be interesting to do is to bring in my virtual assistant, Kularski, and talk about how you can find a virtual assistant for your musician business, what that involves as far as setting up systems to work with a virtual assistant, what kinds of tasks you can give them, how to find the right virtual assistant for you, all that stuff that I think will be really helpful. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I get this question a lot from my Female Musician Academy members, that they want to know how to find quality people and how to even start getting someone to help them take a few things off of their plate, but they don't have a lot of money. They don't really have a budget for it. So we talk all about that in this interview that I do with my assistant, Caitlin. And before we get into the interview, I do want to make sure and be clear about what a virtual assistant is. A lot of times I'll put something about a VA or virtual assistant, and people don't necessarily know what that is. So just so you know, all a virtual assistant is, or VA for short, is somebody that assists you in your business that is not local to you. So because we have the internet, we have got the ability to have assistants anywhere in the world, really. They don't need to come into our office or, see us face to face. So I personally have assistants in the Philippines. I have Caitlin, who is in Massachusetts. I have another assistant who's actually locally in town. And then I have, my podcast editor who's in Indiana. So, I've got all these people that I work with all over the place. And, luckily with the internet, we've got tools like Skype. We've got tools like Zoom to have meetings. We've got tools like Trello or Asana to share projects and assign tasks to people and be able to keep track of these things. I mean, we are really, really fortunate to be, living in the time that we are, where we have all these tools available to us to make these things easier. So now that I've explained what a virtual assistant or VA is, let me tell you a little bit about my guest, Caitlin Kularski. Caitlin Kularski is a busy mom and entrepreneur. She got into virtual assistants about a year ago when her youngest son went to kindergarten. She's switched her focus from nourishing children to nourishing the businesses of female entrepreneurs. So here is my interview with my virtual assistant, Caitlin Kularski. So that's a little bit about my virtual assistant, Caitlin Kularski. So Caitlin, is there anything that you want to tell our listeners about you that's interesting or quirky or different that they wouldn't find out about you in a bio?
Well, I've been with my husband for almost 17 years. We have 3 boys. ages 14, 7, and 8, almost 9. I live in Massachusetts, and I have an extreme love of essential oils and natural living.
That's good.
So I like to make my own products and things like that when I'm not working.
Wow, that's cool. So the reason that I had you on here is obviously because you work with me, and I've had a lot of questions from musicians about how they can use, how they can get help. Then how, once they get help, like what do they do? Because I see a lot of them struggling with like, now I have help, but I don't know how to tell them what to do. I don't know what they can do for me. So we'll get into that in a minute, but let's find out a little bit about how you got started working as a virtual assistant and, what kind of drew you to that type of work.
Okay. Well, when I graduated from college with a bachelor's in business, and I worked in the retail world for a while, retail management. And then when I got pregnant with my third son, I decided I needed to do something that was a little bit more, a little bit easier to do with a family. So I decided to open a childcare program, actually, because I wasn't sure what to do with a virtual assistant. I had wanted to do that. I just didn't know where to start. And back then the resources were kind of small. So I opened a childcare program. And then when my youngest went to kindergarten, I decided it was time to move on and get back to my passion, which is business and helping entrepreneurs and female musicians or female entrepreneurs, work their business and just kind of get things going from them.
So how did you get plugged into that like virtual assistant world? Like I know like kind of once you get your first foot in the door, like people, obviously I was introduced to you by somebody else. And so how did you kind of get that first contact?
As far as getting a client or?
Yeah. Or like, how did you get your first client, or was your first client sent to you by somebody else that you knew?
Well, I was in a bunch of Facebook groups networking, and that's kind of where I started out meeting other virtual assistants. So that was a really great resource for me. And then I actually became friends with another girl. Like, it's a really nice support system to have. So I became friends with this one girl, and she's actually the one that introduced us. And she, I did some work for her, and then she referred me to a couple people, and it just kind of grew from there.
Yeah, I think it's just like, the female musician community, when I try to create these opportunities for people to network and, they can help each other. And it's the same thing with you guys. Cause I know that the girl that sent you to me, like I had talked to her about doing some work for me, and she's like, well, I could do this, but this is, I know somebody that this is more really up her alley and more in her wheelhouse, and she'd get really excited about this. And so that was perfect. And I think, that's really the power of networking. And so I want to point that out for musicians, like as far as looking for assistance, definitely, talk to other musicians, find out what they're doing, if they have anybody that works for them, because a lot of times, musicians can't afford to have someone working for them full time. So they may have hired somebody for, 5 hours a week or, 10 hours a month or something. And that person would like to have more clients. So, it's a win-win for everybody.
Right.
If you find people like that. And I know that's worked for us too. I've introduced friends to you because I know that you want to, fill out your client list, and, I want to help you and I want to help my friends. And, so it works out really, really well. So I think that idea of Facebook groups, I mean, obviously for, we've got our free Facebook group for female musicians, the female indie musician community. And then we also have, the paid community of the Female Musician Academy, where there's kind of people in there that are maybe a little bit higher level and probably are more likely to have assistance. And then, that's a great place to find people that are using assistance. So let me ask you, if you were recommending to a musician how they can find a virtual assistant, what would you have them do? Where would you suggest they start?
I would suggest that they probably go to social media groups that they're already in. and connect with some colleagues that are, do the same kind of work as them, and just see if anybody has a virtual assistant, and just kind of work from referrals. That's where I would go first. And then after that, they could even reach out to virtual assistant groups on Facebook. There are so many of them that, people can join, and you can put your work in there, or you could also go on programs like Fiverr or Upwork and kind of look for people there as well.
Yeah. Do you have any opinions on those? Like, I have never used Fiverr or Upwork because it scares me. Like, you don't know.
Right.
I always like to operate off referrals if I can.
Yeah. And that's where I would say to start. I wouldn't suggest going to Fiverr or Upwork first, because it is tricky. You don't know who you're going to get. You don't know, what kind of work they're going to provide. It's nice to always have the opinion or the experience of someone else to kind of go back from,
For sure.
So.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely feel that way. And I think with Fiverr and Upwork, like, there's so many people on there. You could waste so much time, trying to weed through all these people that you could choose from.
Right.
Not even knowing if they're going to be a good fit or not.
Yes, exactly. There are so many people.
When you get to the point where, like, okay, you've gotten a referral from somebody, and you want to kind of interview them to see if they're going to be a good fit for you, what would you recommend? Like, how would you do the interview? And are there any particular kinds of questions you'd recommend that musicians ask of the potential assistant?
You should always ask them if they're familiar with the programs that you use as a musician, just to make sure that they have either experience using them, or if they, could just learn a little bit about it. It's good to make sure that, they know basic programs that you use.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, for example, musicians might use specific kinds of website programs like Bandzoogle, which is one that I recommend, or, Host Baby or something. Now, like, a regular virtual assistant probably wouldn't have experience with that,
Right.
But you'd want to find out if they have experience with any kind of web design, or at least just putting things on a website, using WordPress or Squarespace or something like that, right? Because that can translate over.
Right, exactly. Yep. And the other thing that's good too, is to know what you want to outsource. So if you sit down and you try to, look at your business and look at what you're falling behind on, what's easier for you to outsource to somebody, you can always start there too. For example, if you need to do social media posts, that's a pretty common skill that most virtual assistants have. I mean, obviously you can post to social media, schedule them out, or create graphics. That's also something that can be done by a social media virtual assistant, or just a general VA.
Yeah, that's a good one. And, another thing is any kind of writing or proofreading is a good one. Like, to me, if you're writing a blog post, you're writing emails, like, for me, sometimes no matter how many times I read something over, I still don't catch mistakes.
Yep.
And so, obviously you want to put your best foot forward as a musician and not have a bunch of mistakes in your stuff. And so having an assistant to proofread, or, help you create some copy for maybe, the inside of your CD jacket, if you're working on that, just putting all the formatting together. There's a lot of things. I think the key is probably to sit down and write a list of all the things that you do, say, in a week, and then see the things on there that only you can do. Obviously,
Right.
Only you can write your songs, or only you can perform your songs, but there's a lot of other things you do, right, that other people can do.
Yep. That's the thing. The trick is to really get through your list and see what you can outsource, and what things that you need to focus on, like you said.
Yeah. And I think, with our situation, like, there's a lot of things that you do for me that you create the whole backbone of it, and you do almost 95% of it. And then I just come in and go, okay, I need to add like a little bit of my personal touch and just, check everything over, make sure it's good, So just for, musicians to know, like, Caitlin helps me with all my newsletters. And it's not that I don't ever see them. I see them, but it takes me 5 to 10 minutes instead of taking me an hour or more to create the thing from the beginning, because, that's going to save me a ton of time, but I'm still putting my own stamp on it. So
Right.
there's definitely ways that you guys can have assistants help you with newsletters and social media posts and things like that are writing, that don't have to be you writing, but you can go in and just make a little bit of, personal additions to it later.
Yes, definitely.
Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's important to know where to get started. And what do you think about like personality match? Like, is there any way to figure out, it's kind of subjective, right? But what kind of questions would you ask in an interview to figure out if someone's going to be a good personality match, or they're going to have the same kind of work ethic?
Well, I think the best thing to do is just to kind of get on a call with a potential virtual assistant and get to know them a little bit. Just make small talk and get to know each other and ask them what they do for work right now, how many clients they have, what kind of things they do for those clients, and how can that translate into helping you as a musician. There can be any number of questions that, you could ask. You could ask about specific programs, or if, the other good thing too is to just ask if what a VA loves to do.
That's a good one.
Yeah, because you want them to do something for you that they enjoy doing. And if they enjoy doing it, they're going to obviously go 110% at it.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Like, if you're going to have them do social media, like say, how much time do you spend on social media each day? Or do you like being on social media?
Right, exactly.
Because I think some people just totally have an aversion to it and don't want to, and you want to find that out in advance.
Right.
Do you think that a VA needs to be a musician or a music lover to work for a musician? Or do you think that's advantageous?
I think that it helps if you're a musician, or if, a music lover at best, at least, because I'm not a musician at all, but I really enjoy working for you. And I think that we have a great working relationship. I have a love of music, but like I said, I'm not a musician at all. I don't know anything about music. So, but
you're learning from all of the stuff that you have to do for me,
I am learning. And that's the other great thing is, like, when you work with different people in all these different areas, it's fun to just kind of learn new things. And I think that's another great thing that you could look for in a VA, somebody that likes to learn new things.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed too is that, we focus a lot on, like, with the students in the academy, focusing on promoting, their wins and all the great things that have happened for them in their career. And I noticed that you're like, oh, this is so cool that they're doing all this stuff. Like, you start to feel like you're really involved in what's going on in our community.
Yeah, totally.
Which I love, right?
Totally.
It's just going to make you more excited about working more.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Especially like when we get to post like wins and things that people are working on and milestones that people in your academy are hitting, it's amazing work to see it, and it's inspiring. It's inspiring for me because
it's cool. You don't have to be a musician to be inspired by seeing what people are doing and how they're really improving.
Right, exactly. And that's what's fun for me too.
So what do you think about, musicians that are on like a very small budget, or they've never had a VA before? Do you have any recommendations of how they can start? What do you think about maybe reaching out to someone that's a fan, to their fan community, and see if anyone in there would like to work for them in some way, especially with just starting with social media?
Yeah, totally. That's a great way to just ask, just to put something out there and just say, who in my fans is a virtual assistant or something like that, and get, just kind of get people that way. I think the best thing to do is to start small. So start out with either a project that you need done that's, not a huge project, but maybe getting your social media set up for like a month and scheduled out so you don't have to worry about it. That would be a great project that somebody could do for you for a smaller amount of money.
That's a good point too, like a testing project.
Yes.
Like we'll do this one project, we'll see how it goes, and then we'll expand from there.
Yeah, definitely. And I've done testing projects for other clients before, and I work for them now. They're my regular clients. So it works out good. And the other thing that you could do is start with a small hourly package. So if somebody offers, most VAs, I mean, everybody's different, but some have packages, some have just hourly based, but you could just start out that way where it's something small, just so you're not putting out a ton of money.
Right. And one thing I would say, so like you can go and look for specifically for a VA and they'll have kind of a system set up. So when I started working with Caitlin, she had a system where she used Trello and she uses LastPass and, she's like sent me an email that said, okay, this is our shared folder on Google Drive and here's the Trello board and here, and so that was cool for me because she already had a system and I didn't need to think about, well, how are we going to share information? And, so that's what's great about getting someone that's actually an established VA is that they should have systems set up. But if you're just starting out and you're looking for like, maybe you find a friend who's a stay-at-home mom and who can, do a little work for you on the side, that's great to start out, but you're going to have to think a little bit more of how you're going to communicate with them and how you're going to set things up because they won't have a system.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's important to have those systems in place like Trello or Asana for project management, LastPass for sharing password information. Having Google Apps is really great also because you can, like we have the shared folder
Right.
and we can, so that's nice that we can communicate on all these different levels.
Right. Dropbox, all these things that when you're not sitting next to the person, how can you still communicate, send files, all that stuff? And also another important thing is that we don't communicate over email hardly ever.
No.
Because email gets messy and you lose things in threads and,
Yes.
So setting up these kind of systems is really helpful.
Yeah. The project management system is huge, I think. So just getting started with something basic like Trello or Asana, as I mentioned before, would be a great way to start. That's a great way to organize your projects too and make sure that you're meeting your goals and deadlines.
Definitely. So do you have any tips for maybe creating a trusting relationship with your VA and empowering them to kind of make decisions so they don't feel like they have to ask you about every little thing?
I think that, giving your VA positive feedback is really important. Having weekly or biweekly meetings is really important. Even just a half hour to hop on Skype or phone or whatever, just to kind of talk about current projects that are going on. And then just tell your VA, like if you want ideas or you want advice about stuff, you could tell your VA, I'm really open to ideas. If you think that I'm doing this in a way that could be better, then let me know. And, you can work things out that way too. That's a really great way to empower a VA.
For sure. And I can't stress enough too, like you have to understand that they're never going to do the stuff the way you would because they're not you. Right. So exactly. You can't expect a VA to do everything exactly the way you would. And number one, you wouldn't want that because then you wouldn't have any fresh ideas brought into the situation because it still would just be you. So, that's a useful thing, but just know that like mistakes are going to happen. Like every once in a while, the VA is going to make an error and you cannot jump all over them because you need to empower them to, say, okay, like, yeah, I made that mistake. Sorry, I'll fix it. And, you can't expect that people aren't going to be human, right?
Right, exactly. And I mean, that's another great way to, kind of get your relationship going with a VA too, is just, if they make a mistake, just say, hey, I noticed this. It's no big deal. Can you just go in and fix it real quick? Or, something like that. I mean, that's as long as you're not jumping down their throat and making them feel terrible. I think that it would be, it's good. And it's also good for the VA to know too, because I personally am my worst critic. I hate when I make mistakes. So I like it when you point them out, but you don't jump down my throat.
Well, and then we had something that happened recently that was totally not your fault, but you felt like so bad about it.
Oh my gosh.
Having to do with that password situation.
Yes.
And it like shut down our website for a day and it was not her fault at all, but something that she did caused it to happen. And it was totally like no one knew. And so, I mean, I can't go, I can't believe you did that. Cause she had absolutely no idea. And she was actually feeling way worse about it than I was
I
because I
felt
realized
terrible.
it was a total
I
accident.
still feel terrible. I do. Yeah, I mean, it's hard. You wanna impress your clients. You wanna be, top notch all the time for them. And these things happen. I mean, like you said, it was nothing that I did intentionally, but it can feel that way. So it was nice that you were like, "Oh, don't worry about it."
Yeah, I mean it's important that you guys know as musicians that your relationship with your VA is a person to person relationship. It's not like, you're handing something to a computer and it spits something back out at you. I mean, if you want to have a successful relationship with someone who's assisting you, you have to treat them like a human. You have to have a relationship with them and you have to be understanding and open and, all that stuff. So the reason I'm saying this is because I have seen, people that I know who hired VAs and they had all these expectations that everything was going to come back perfect and exactly the way that they would do it. And when it didn't work out that way, like in the first week, they gave up.
Right.
And I don't want this to happen to you guys. If the VA is not doing what you want, most of the problem is probably you because you didn't communicate it correctly to them.
Yeah, communication's huge. That is one of the biggest issues I find between other VAs and clients. It just, I like to always be there for my clients, but it's tough sometimes for some people.
Yeah, and I think it's important also that we have a weekly meeting because, in the past, before I started working with you, I have VAs and we don't have weekly meetings. And I noticed the difference in us having a weekly meeting because you really understand what's going on in my business because I share that.
Right.
Whereas with my other VAs, I just give them little projects and they do them for me and they really don't know how it relates to the big picture.
Yeah.
So I think as you bring on a VA and if you want them to be more prominent in your business, share more of what you're doing. Like, what's the vision for your music? What are you working on that's like down the road? Like you're working on songs for a new album and, what's that going to look like? Like share that with your VA so they can get excited and they can start thinking about stuff that, maybe ideas that they have to put into the mix.
Or ways that they could help you or support you while you're getting to that.
Right. I mean, just the other day, like I was struggling to get this thing done that I've been trying to do for weeks. And then Caitlin was like, well, you could just send that over to me and I could, start working on it. And I was like, oh yeah, I could, couldn't I? So if you have a really good, like two-way street relationship with a VA, then they can start recommending things. Oh, you shouldn't be doing that. I can do that. And that feels so great. Like that I could just spend 15 minutes putting all the pieces and sending it to her. And then it's like, oh, it's off my plate.
Yeah. And, I think it's important too for a VA to take ownership in what they're doing. And especially like, with our relationship the way it is, I feel like I have not really ownership in your company, but ownership of what I do within your business. Mm-hmm. So it really helps me to do my best and to be there for you. And it's, it's almost like taking care of your child, honestly. Right?
Yes, I do feel like my business is my third child.
Yeah. And so it's important to find somebody that you have that kind of a relationship with.
Yeah, I mean, that's so important for musicians too, because I always say, our albums or our songs, they feel like our babies.
Right.
And so you don't, you want to know, just like you want to know about your babysitter, as much as you can about them and their character and, what they do outside of the relationship that you have. You want to know that about your VA because they're taking care of your babies.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, it has been really great, getting some insight from a VA and, not just my opinion about it. It's been great to have this kind of, two-way conversation about it. Why don't you let our listeners know how they can get in touch with you if they would like to hire you as a VA?
Sure. You can visit my website at www.caitlinkularski.com.
Yeah, you probably want to spell that.
Yes, I will. It's CAITLINKULARSKI.com. Or you could find me on Facebook /Caitlin Kularski Virtual Assistant.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you. We are about to get on to our actual meeting for the morning where we're going to talk about how we're going to rock my business. So
That's right.
Have a great day, all of you guys. I hope you learned something about, how to use assistants in your business as a musician. And it's just another way that you can adopt things that entrepreneurs use that, really make you a strong business person and not just somebody who's out there promoting their music, but they haven't thought through all the aspects of how you can really make your music a business and work for you. Now go out and make great music, connect with your fans, and grow your business. Female Entrepreneur Musician has been brought to you by FEM81.com and FemaleMusicianAcademy.com. With editing by Jen Eads of 317 Sound Design and music by Stella Ronson.